Maybe you came here looking for an answer. Maybe your heart is heavy, your mind restless, or you're just tired of worrying about everything. I understand, we've all felt that way. That sense of being overwhelmed, of thinking about everything that's missing, everything that's going wrong, the problems that don't go away, and the uncertain future. It's like your soul is drained and your faith feels shaky. But today, I want to speak directly to that feeling. Because there is something that transforms and calms, and that something is truly trusting in God. Faith isn't just words, trusting is deeper. Trusting is letting go, surrendering, giving God control even when nothing makes sense. It starts when you say, "Lord, I can't, but you can." That's where peace begins. If this speaks to your heart, remember, sharing it may help bring hope to someone else who feels just like you. Type, "I trust God," if you feel it, you don't need to say more. He already knows what's behind those words. Prepare your heart, open your spirit, and breathe deeply. What's coming might be the beginning of your peace. Let's be real, life gets chaotic. Things fall apart. The job doesn't come, the bills pile up, loved ones get sick, prayers feel unanswered. The noise in your head becomes overwhelming, and trusting feels almost impossible. But that's when you need it the most. God never promised a life without trouble. But He did promise to be with us through the storm. Psalm 55 verse 22 says, "Cast your burden on the Lord and He will sustain you." Not that the problem will disappear immediately, but when you give it to Him, He carries it with you, and that changes everything. Trust isn't an emotion, it's a decision. It's saying, "I don't understand, but I believe. I'm tired, but I still trust." Because if you're not choosing trust, you're choosing worry. There is no middle ground. Worry grows when we focus on the problem instead of on God. Like Peter walking on water, as long as his eyes were on Jesus, he stayed afloat. The moment he looked at the storm, he sank. Letting go isn't easy. But carrying the weight of control every day is even harder. So God says, "Put it in my hands." In Isaiah 41 verse 10, He reminds us, "Don't be afraid, I am with you. I will strengthen and help you." Even when you feel like you're falling, His hand holds you firm. Living like everything depends on you is a weight you were never meant to carry. When you truly trust, you start to live free. You may not know how everything will work out, but you know who holds the future. Many times, the real issue isn't what's happening, it's that we want everything to go our way. We want people to act how we expect, results on our timeline, answers in our preferred form. But when life doesn't follow our script, frustration grows. And at the root of most anxiety, the need for control. Only God holds total control. We are called to trust, obey, and walk in faith, not to steer every outcome. The faster we realize that, the sooner we can rest. Jesus said in Matthew 6 verse 34, "Do not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself." He didn't promise there'd be no trouble, He said not to carry it before it even arrives. Worrying doubles your pain, once for what's happening, once for what might happen. Trying to control everything only breeds tension. You're constantly adjusting, fixing, stressing, and when life veers off course, so does your peace. But how many times have you forced things only to watch them fall apart anyway? That's because not everything is yours to manage. There's a greater wisdom, a divine will that surpasses our plans. Like Moses, who struck the rock instead of speaking to it, he acted from frustration instead of obedience and missed out on the promised land. When we force our way, even with good intentions, we end up exhausted. But when we align with God's way and surrender the rest, life starts flowing differently, not perfectly, but peacefully. So when you feel the urge to control, pause, breathe, and pray, "Lord, this is beyond me, but never beyond you. I give it to you." Philippians 4 verses 6 to 7 tells us to bring everything to God in prayer, and then His peace will guard our hearts. Not after everything is fixed, but as we surrender. That's when anxiety quiets, and peace begins. Everyone longs for peace, but few find it. Why? Because most seek it in perfect circumstances. We think peace will come once the debt is paid, the sickness cured, the relationship restored. But that's a lie. There will always be something more. If peace depends on perfection, you'll never have it. Jesus said in John 14 verse 27, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give as the world gives." His peace isn't circumstantial. It doesn't change with the chaos around you, it comes from knowing who is with you. Like a child who finds comfort not because the night disappears, but because their parent is near, so it is with God. His presence doesn't erase every storm, but it changes how we go through them. David knew this when he wrote in Psalm 23 verse 4, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." Not because there were no dark valleys, but because God walked with him through them. So how do you experience that peace? Through connection. By spending time with God, praying, reading His Word. The more you're aware of His presence, the less room there is for fear. And remember, this isn't about being spiritually perfect. You don't need to have it all together. All you need is a sincere heart that says, "God, I need you. I want your peace." When you open up like that, the Holy Spirit begins to work, not always in dramatic ways, but in deep, steady, powerful ways. So trust. Surrender. Rest. Because even when you can't see it, God is working. There won't always be tears or intense emotions, but little by little, something inside you begins to shift. You stop living defensively. You stop chasing control. You stop fighting what you don't understand, and start living with the peace that comes from knowing God is involved. That's the peace that surpasses all understanding. And the most beautiful part is this: even when others don't understand how you can stay calm, you know why. It's not because everything is okay, but because you're not alone. There is a refuge that never fails, and that refuge is God. So don't search for peace in your circumstances, seek it in His presence. Because when God is with you, you don't need to understand everything. You don't need all the pieces to fall into place, you just need to trust. And trusting is resting. Trusting is surrender. It's saying, "Lord, here I am. Do your work in me." If you're willing to seek that peace, then you're ready to live differently, lighter, freer, not because you're strong, but because God is. Faith doesn't mean everything will happen the way you want, it means everything will happen the way God knows is best. And that changes everything. Often, we're not frustrated because God didn't act, but because He didn't act the way we expected. That's where our trust is tested. Do we trust only when things go our way, or even when His will leads us through uncertainty? There is no real faith without uncertainty. No real trust if you have all the answers. Faith is walking without seeing. It's letting go without guarantees. It's obeying even when you don't understand. And yes, it hurts. Because deep down, we want God to explain everything, to show us the ending before the beginning, to spare us from the pain. But if He did that, we wouldn't need faith. We'd just be spectators of a plan, not participants in a relationship. Hebrews 11 verse 1 says, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." That means even when your eyes see chaos, your heart still believes God is working. Even when the outcome isn't visible, you know you're not alone. Even when it hurts, you still trust. Here's something you need to remember: God never ignores a prayer. He hears everything. But He doesn't always respond the way you expect. Sometimes He says yes. Sometimes no. Sometimes wait. And every answer is love. Because God doesn't give you what you want. He gives you what your soul needs. There's a powerful story in the Bible. Mary and Martha called for Jesus when their brother Lazarus was sick. But Jesus delayed. When He finally arrived, Lazarus had already died. Martha said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died." Isn't that the cry of so many of our prayers? God, if you had acted earlier, I wouldn't be hurting right now. But Jesus had a bigger plan. He didn't just want to heal Lazarus. He wanted to resurrect him. He didn't want a temporary solution, he wanted to demonstrate a power beyond expectation. And it's the same with you. What feels like delay may actually be preparation. What seems like silence may be God shaping your heart, strengthening your faith, aligning your soul with His will. God's purpose isn't just to fix your situation. It's to transform your life. So if you're frustrated because things didn't go your way, remember, maybe God is writing a better story, one you'll thank Him for later. Because often, His no is the doorway to something greater. And His silence? It means He's working in the invisible. Romans 8 verse 28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him." Not in some things, in all things. Even what hurts. Even what you didn't expect. Even what feels like loss. In God's hands, all of it can shape you, grow you, and draw you closer to Him. So today, if you're facing something you don't understand, if your plans fell apart, if you feel God didn't answer, don't give up. Faith isn't about understanding everything. It's about trusting the one who does. And if He allowed it, there is a purpose, even if you can't see it now. This is the key, when you can honestly say, "Lord, I don't understand, but I still trust you," that's when peace starts to take over. Because you realize your peace doesn't come from the outcome, but from God's presence in the process. And here's the final truth, prayer doesn't always change your situation, but it always changes you. Many pray hoping for change around them. And yes, God can do that, He can open doors, heal, and transform. But often, the first thing that changes in prayer is you. Your perspective shifts. Your heart softens. Your focus realigns. And that internal transformation can be more powerful than any outward miracle. In real, honest, surrendered prayer, God begins to reshape your character, your emotions, your attitude. Jesus Himself prayed in Gethsemane before the cross. He knew the pain ahead. He knelt and said, "Father, if it's possible, take this cup from me, but not my will, but yours be done." That was raw, real surrender. And in that moment, the situation didn't change, but He did. His heart was strengthened. His peace grew. His obedience was sealed. The same can happen to you. You may be praying for the problem to disappear, but maybe God is using that prayer to shape you. To make you stronger. More humble. Wiser. More like Jesus. Because every time you pray, something happens. Even if you don't feel it. Even if you see no signs. Even if there's no emotion or visible answer. Prayer isn't just about asking, it's about aligning your soul with heaven. Pouring out your burden. Receiving peace. Philippians 4 verses 6 to 7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." Do you see it? You pray. You speak with God. And what you receive isn't always an immediate solution, but peace. A peace that protects your heart from breaking under pressure. That's real victory. Not when everything outside changes, but when you are no longer the same inside. When you stop reacting with fear, and start responding with faith. When your first instinct in trouble is not to scream, but to kneel, that is the power of prayer. It doesn't just change your situation, it changes you. Even when it seems like nothing is happening, don't stop praying. God is working inside you first. When He finishes His work within, He often begins changing what's outside. Your heart is always the starting point. So when you feel like breaking, don't chase human answers, run to the secret place. Speak to God. Cry if you must. Complain if you need to, but stay there until the storm inside you quiets. After that, you'll realize you're no longer the same. You're stronger. You're resting in a peace that only God gives. Worry solves nothing, but trusting in God changes everything. Yes, it's easy to say, don't worry, but harder to live it. Worry won't fix anything, it only drains your strength, steals your peace, and clouds your vision. Trusting God may not change your situation immediately, but it always brings clarity and direction. That difference can define your destiny. Jesus asked, can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Worry adds nothing. It only takes your energy, your focus, your peace. Think for a moment, how many hours have you lost worrying about things that never even happened? We do it constantly, as if it were our natural way to survive. But it's not the way of God's kingdom. You weren't made to carry everything, you were made to depend on Him. To walk by His side, especially when nothing makes sense. Worrying is living like God isn't real. Trusting is living like He's already at work. And here's a deep truth, the enemy doesn't always try to destroy your life, sometimes he just fills it with fear. If he can keep you anxious, paralyzed, and blind to what God is doing, that's enough to disconnect you from your purpose. That's why trusting God is a spiritual weapon. It says, I won't live by how I feel, but by what I know. God is faithful. He's in control, even when I'm not. 1 Peter 5 verse 7 says, cast all your anxiety on Him, because He cares for you. Not some, all. Not only when you've lost control, but always. Every thought that steals your peace, surrender it. Every fear whispering in your ear, face it with God's truth. And that's something you can practice every day. When anxiety comes, pause. Don't feed it. Don't spiral. Breathe. Close your eyes and say, Lord, I give this to you. I can't, but you can. I don't know, but you do. When you truly trust, your thoughts change. You're no longer chasing desperate solutions, you're learning to listen. To wait. To obey even without answers. To walk by faith. Over time, things begin to change, not because life is perfect, but because you are stronger. You've stopped carrying it all, and started surrendering it all. That's the real rest, knowing you don't have to be enough, because God already is. So next time anxiety hits like a wave, don't open the door. Instead, run to His truth, He is with you. He's in control. He hasn't forgotten you. And if you can believe that, even with mustard seed faith, it'll move mountains of fear, anxiety, and doubt. Because trusting God changes everything. Take the next step, just one more. Because it's not about how far you are, but that you don't stop. As long as you're walking, God is working. Don't waste your strength trying to please everyone. Please God, and you'll finally rest. Many of your worries don't come from real problems, but from trying to win everyone's approval. You're stressed about what others think, how they judge you, whether they agree with your choices. That constant pressure steals your peace. But here's a truth that will set you free, you weren't created to please people, you were created to please God. That doesn't mean being rebellious. It means your heart is set on honoring the one who truly knows you, your soul, your story, your purpose. When you seek people's approval, you're chasing a moving target. But when you live to please God, you find rest. Galatians 1 verse 10 says, if I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. Strong words, but freeing. You don't owe explanations to those who weren't there in your pain, who never lifted you up but are quick to judge. Your life is not a performance. It's an altar where you honor God. When you live for heaven, you stop needing validation from earth. You walk lighter. You're no longer crushed by criticism or inflated by praise. You become steady, because you know who you are and who you're living for. Even Jesus was rejected and misunderstood, but He never changed His message just to be liked. His mission was never to be popular, but to do the Father's will. That's our mission too, If you're tired of trying to please everyone and still feeling like it's not enough, let go. Say, Lord, I just want to please you. That's enough for me. When you do that, peace enters your soul. Because one of the heaviest burdens in life is trying to be enough for everyone. But when you live to please God, your soul finds rest. Stop asking, what do they think of me? Start asking, am I walking in obedience? If the answer is yes, keep going. Because when you walk with God, you never walk alone. And remember this, what's happening to you doesn't define you. What God says about you does. Your pain, your past, your failures, none of that decides your worth. God already defined your identity. Ephesians 2 verse 10 says, "You are God's masterpiece, created for good works He prepared in advance." You're not forgotten. You're not a mistake. God had a plan for you before you were even born, and nothing you've gone through has cancelled that. Yes, the season may hurt, but it's not forever. The pain will pass. The storm will calm. But God's call on your life is eternal. You may be broken, but you are not discarded. You may feel weak, but you are still chosen. Romans 8 verse 37 says, "In all these things, we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us." Not because life is easy, but because God's love never fails. So lift your head. Breathe deep. Don't let what happened define who you are. Let what He declared shape your future. Because if God said it, it's true. And if He's with you, what's coming is greater than what's behind you. Amen.